today's video, you will be learning about the Montessori method. At the end of this session, you will be knowing who Maria Montessori was, the fundamental principles of Montessori method, categorization of Montessori method, the didactic apparatus for teaching language and arithmetic, the teacher's role in Montessori method, the discipline of children in the Montessori method, the merits and demerits of Montessori method. First, let us know who Dr. Maria Montessori was. Maria Montessori was an Italian doctor who later became one of the greatest educationists of the world. The Montessori method derives its name from Maria Montessori. She became the first Italian lady to get the Doctor of Medicine. Later on, she became the supervisor of schools and she worked with mentally deficient children. She started her first school in 1907 and she named it as Children's House. She developed a new method of educating children and this method was named as sense training. In 1922, she was appointed as the inspectress of infant schools by the government of Italy. She began to impart training to teachers in the new method discovered by teachers from other countries of Europe, including England, received training from Maria Montessori. She came to India in 1939 and stayed here up to 1946. She spent most of her time at Madras and Ooty and promoted her views on early childhood. Apart from opening several nursery schools, she trained a large number of teachers for nursery schools. She visited India again in 1948 and spent about 3 years in India. This was the time when she delivered 12 talks on child training from the All India radio station at Madras. Let us move on to the fundamental principles of Maria Montessori method. She believed in the principle of individual development, principle of self-education, principle of freedom or liberty, principle of no material rewards and punishments, principle of sense training, principle of motor efficiency or muscular training. First, let us see what is the principle of individual development. Maria Montessori believed that every child is peculiar to himself or herself and he progresses at his own speed and rate. She even treated each child as a separate individual and recommended that he should be helped and guided in a manner that helps himself in his proper growth and development. She believed that teachers should be concerned with his mental as well as his physiological development. So, this is the principle of individual development. Next is the principle of self-education or auto-education. Montessori shifted the emphasis from teaching to learning. She believed that self-education is the only true education. She also advocated that the child should remain undisturbed by adult interference. Thus, she devised the didactic apparatus which attracted the attention of the children, kept them busy spontaneously, and also led them to learn the powers of movements, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Hence, she believed in the principle of self-education. Next is the principle of freedom or liberty. This doctrine was the outcome of the concept of education as development. She believed that there should be no hindrance or interference in the way of child's growth and development. She also believed that the freedom is the birthright of every individual and she advocated the spontaneous development of the child through full liberty. She did not believe in putting restraints as she thought that these may stop the innate powers of the child. Next is the principle of no material rewards and punishments. She believed that incentives are unnatural or it is a forced effort and the development that comes with their help will also be unnatural. Hence, she did not advocate material rewards and punishments. The next principle is principles of sense training. Montessori asserted that senses are the gateways of knowledge and therefore the senses training and development depended upon the acquisition of knowledge throughout life. She also pointed out that the senses are very active between the ages of 3 and 7 and that a lot of learning takes place during this period. She advocated that the sensory training is the key to intellectual development. And the next principle is principle of motor efficiency or muscular training. She gave much importance to muscular training as a part of the early education of children. She believed that muscular training facilitates other activities like writing, drawing, speaking, etc. She took muscular activity as purely physiological in character, and she stressed on running, walking, etc., which all depended on muscular training. So these are all the principles of Maria Montessori method. Now let us move on to the categorization of Maria Montessori method. She divided the method into 4 parts as sensory training, training in practical life activities, motor training, language and arithmetic teaching. Let us see one after the other. The first one is sensory training. Montessori gave much importance to sensory training as she regarded it as the gateway of knowledge. Different kinds of materials were used to develop sensory training of children. In order to develop the sense of size, there were a series of wooden cylinders varying in height, in diameter, or in both. Blocks varying regularly in size and rods of regular varying lengths were also used. For the perception of color, pink cubes, brown prisms, green and alternatively red and blue rods and colored tablets were used. For perception of form, geometrical insets in metal, wood, a chest of drawers containing plain insets, series of cards on which geometrical forms were pasted were also used. For the discrimination in weight, tablets of wood similar in size but different in weight was used. For discrimination in touch, rectangular tablet with rough and smooth surface was used. For discrimination in sound, cylindrical boxes containing different substances, musical bells, small wooden discs for notes were also used. So these were all the different materials that were used by Maria Montessori to develop the senses of children. She also employed 3 stages, that is the stage of association, the stage of recognition and the stage of recalling. Association of the sensory percept with the name. Second one is the recognition of the object and third one is recalling the name of the object. Thus the child was made to associate, recognize and recall and thus develop his or her senses. So this is the first part of Maria Montessori method. Let's go on to the second part, that is training in practical life activities. Maria Montessori called exercises as exercises in practical life because in her school, everyday life is carried on in which all the household work is entrusted to the little ones or the children. The students were required to sweep their rooms, dust and clean the furniture and arrange it as they liked. They learnt dressing and undressing, washing themselves, hanging up their clothes tidily, laying their tables, cutting their hair, washing their hands, combing their hair and brushing their teeth. They were also taught to use wash stands with small pitchers and basins. The main purpose behind this training in practical life is to give children training in self-reliance and liberty and also to be important. And the third part of Maria Montessori method is motor education or motor training. These practical life exercises were considered to be very helpful for motor training. Muscular education was imparted in connection with the movements of walking, sitting and holding objects. The care of child's own body, managing the household affairs, gardening and manual work and rhythmic movements provided motor training. Children also learned how to walk in straight lines and to balance them properly. So this is about motor training or motor education. And the last part of Montessori method is teaching language and arithmetic. This was Montessori used didactic apparatus for teaching language and arithmetic. She was of the opinion that muscular skill in children is very easily developed and therefore the teaching of writing should precede the teaching of reading. Hence, teaching of writing was given much preference. In her method of teaching of writing, she involved three factors. They were movements which help in reproducing the forms of the letters, manipulation of the pen, and the phonetic analysis of words and writing to dictation. The letters of the alphabet were cut in sandpaper and pasted on cardboards. The students were asked to pass their fingers on them. They learned to establish the visual muscular images of the letters. At the same time, the phonetic sounds were also taught in three stages, that is association, recognition and recall. There are certain exercises through which the students were taught handling the pen. So this is teaching of writing. Now moving on to teaching of reading, Montessori was not in favor of reading sentences aloud. The child was handed over a card on which the names of the familiar objects were written and pasted. The child should translate the writing slowly into sounds and then he is asked to read faster. After some practice, the child learns the correct pronunciation of the word. Then the child is asked to attach the cards with the objects lying there. Thus, teaching reading was done. And the last thing is teaching of number. Maria Montessori used long stair in teaching numbers. It consisted of a set of rods varying in length from 1 to 10 decimeters. It is divided into parts which were painted red and blue alternately. The child learnt first to arrange the rods of size and then he counted the red and blue divisions and named the rods as 1, 2, 3, etc. The signs of the numbers were cut in sandpaper and the same procedure of association, recognition and recall were followed. So this was how teaching of number done. Now let us see what is didactic apparatus. Didactic apparatus is an apparatus that is used for teaching language and arithmetic. Didactic means designed or intended to teach. Didactic material means specially designed instructional material. Hence, didactic materials are specially designed instructional materials which was invented by Maria Montessori and they are the hallmark of all Montessori classrooms. Let us see what this didactic apparatus consists of. It consisted of the following things: 2 sloping desks and various iron insets, cards on which sandpaper letters were pasted, 2 sets of alphabets of colored cardboard and of different sizes, a series of cards on which sandpaper figures are pasted, that is the numericals 1, 2, 3, etc. A series of large cards for the enumeration of numbers above 10. 2 boxes with small sticks for counting, drawings, frames for lacing, buttoning, etc. which are used for motor education of the hand. So these were all the things that consisted of didactic apparatus. Now let us move on to the Montessori school. The Montessori school is not called as school but instead it is called as children's house. This house provides all the requirements of a good family house. As a matter of fact, it has all the qualities of a school, a workshop and a home. There are many rooms in the children's house. The main room of the building is a study room. The smaller rooms are common room, lunch room, restroom, room for mutual work, a gymnasium, a children's bathroom attached to the main room. The rooms are well equipped according to the needs of the children and spirit of the Montessori method. The tables and chairs were specially made for children, which facilitated movement from one place to another. They were also given long cupboards which were of different shapes and sizes. The children kept their didactic apparatus in the cupboard and their things in a little drawer. Blackboards are fixed in the walls on which children draw and paste pictures of different kinds according to their own interests. Students are provided with flowers, toys, pictures, indoor games, etc. The lunchroom contains low tables, chairs, spoons, knives, tumblers, etc. Children are provided with their own little shelf in the drawing room where they can keep their own towel and soap for washing. There is also a small garden which is looked after by the students themselves. Shelters are provided in the garden so that they can enjoy the open air, can play and work there, and they can also sleep if they want to. Children's height and weight are also measured, and a record of the heights and weights of the students was maintained. Moving on to discipline of the children's house or Montessori school. Maria Montessori believed that discipline can never be attained by way of commands, sermons, or by any of the disciplinary methods that are universally known. So she felt that discipline comes by an indirect route, that is, by developing activity in spontaneous work. So there was no strict discipline in children's house. Next, let's move on to the role of teacher in Montessori method. The teacher's role is supposed to be that of a gardener. She has to take care of the children and their natural growth, and she is supposed to properly guide and aid the process of unfolding of the child. So she has to act as a gardener. Then the teacher should have an intimate knowledge of the mind and character of each child. The teacher should keep the physiological records of each child's development, that is, weight, height, and other measurements. And the teacher is supposed to be the directress and not the teacher. The directress' prime duty in authority is to direct and not to teach. Maria Montessori also felt that a directress should have an extensive knowledge of psychology and laboratory technique. The directress should be partly doctor, partly scientist, and completely religious. She felt that, like a doctor, she should avoid scolding or suppressing the patient in order to avoid worse situations. Like a scientist, she should wait patiently for the results and should conduct experiments with her material. Like a religious lady, she should be there to serve the child. So, the teacher's role in Maria Montessori method is threefold, that is, doctor, come scientist, come missionary. Let's move on to the merits and demerits of Maria Montessori method. The chief merits of Montessori method are reverence for small children. Montessori believed that the child was God and her school was temple, and duty of the temple was the recognition of the essence of childhood. So, reverence for small children is one of the chief merits of Montessori method. And the next merit is scientific basis of the method. This method is based upon scientific grounds. Since Maria Montessori was a scientist, she applied scientific principles based on experience and observation. This is another chief merit of Montessori method. The next merit is individual teaching. Individualism is the keynote of Montessori method. Next is freedom for children. The next merit is sense training. Next one is unique method of reading and writing, learning through living, and the last one is training in social life. Let's move on to the demerits of Montessori method. The demerits can be listed as mechanical and artificial nature of didactic apparatus, more emphasis on biological aspects and less on psychological. The transfer of training, which is based on the old theory of formal training of the senses. The neglect of the training of imagination, that is, there is no place for fairy tales in the Montessori system. Lack of suitable teachers, little scope for projects and correlation, and it is a very expensive method. And that is the reason why we find very less Montessori schools in India. So, my dear students, by now you should be aware of who Maria Montessori was, the fundamental principles of Montessori method, categorization of Montessori method, the didactic apparatus for teaching language and arithmetic, the teacher's role in Montessori method, the discipline of children in the Montessori method, the merits and demerits of Montessori method. Until we meet again, take care.